January the 13th of 2016 was the worst night that I've ever experienced in my life.
When you're on board a ship, your cabin's your home, it's your bedroom, the whole ship's your home. It's to get dragged out of your bedroom at 2 in the morning or whatever it was. You can imagine getting dragged out of your home at 2 in the morning.
Mark.
Back it off.
We were left on a pitch black, dark wharf in the middle of the country town with nowhere to go.
I think it was not just making a statement for the crew saying we weren't going to leave, but every battler out there, you know.
Yeah, I regret my marriage falling apart, but I don't regret the stand I took, because that was also for my children. They need a secure job in this future, and if no one's going to stand up, what do we got?
I want you to be the first to know about a major announcement we're making today. We're putting jobs first. We're putting Australians first.
Morning, Smoko. I've gone up and checked my emails and all that, and here's one from my wife. The photo of the local Observer showing an article, MV Portland's last voyage. So I printed it off straight away and put it on the notice board. Went up and seen the captain and said, "Oh, Captain, is this our last voyage?" He goes, "No, who told you that?"
Ship member's wife had taken a scan of it and emailed it to him, and rang him to let him know that she had done so, and then he printed it off and showed me immediately, and I obviously informed the union that had been happened, and I also called ASP themselves and said, look, this is reality now, we've just got this, and they had no idea that this had actually happened. That newspaper article had actually been printed. Alcoa didn't tell them anything, and we found out from a newspaper, so realistically, we were sacked by a newspaper. We decided that the ship wasn't going to go. We weren't going to sail it to Singapore on its last voyage. So when I confronted the captain, we had a list of questions from myself and the rest of the crew that I put to the captain. There were things we needed to know, like if the ship was to go to Singapore, did we have enough stores for a 3-week journey? Did we have enough bunkers, fuel for the main engine and the generators? We wanted to know certain questions about why that hadn't been explained to us. Is this for sure the end of the road for us? Are they looking at a replacement? Is the ship coming on to replace us a temporary measure for another ship to come on the coast that we can man? We needed to know these things, not only for ourselves, but our families were asking questions.
The MV Portland was designed for the Australian trade. It was moving an Australian cargo from one Australian port to the next Australian port. Couldn't get any more Australian than this.
Yeah, we do make massive sacrifices going to sea. We're away from our family for up to 6 months of every year. We're making, I've personally made one of the first 4 years birthdays of my first child. I was there for one Christmas. It wasn't even his first Christmas. I missed first steps, first words, first haircut, just about everything I missed. Just being away, and it was luck of the draw. I never made it to any of these events. I missed the first 2 anniversaries. Can't be helped, but it's what we do. We're seafarers. We take it in stride, even though deep down you want to be there, obviously. And can only imagine what she thinks, she's at home going, missed another birthday, good on you. But she knows why I'm there, I'm working, I'm providing.
I got message that Sue had contracted cancer and couldn't get off the vessel. So I've been away at sea for 27 years. This is one of the things that, it's hard, but you dig in. We found out that the cancer was going to be terminal, and by August the 18th she'd passed. So after that I went through a bit of a bad time, as you can see right now.
Australian seafarers, we are the highest trained in the world. We're proud of what we do. We advance our trainings and skill levels in every way we can possibly do it.
Only New Zealand share the same sort of ticketing that we have and go through everything we do.
But we cannot compete with $2 an hour. Our transport, road transport, doesn't compete with $2 an hour. Our shipping is the same form of transport as road transport, except it's the blue water. We cannot compete, even though our training levels are so much higher than anywhere else in the world. It's just a nasty situation the world's in, and our own government is quite happy just to throw us on the heap, put foreign labour on at $2 an hour. That's how far before they do it everywhere else. They've got rid of our car manufacturing, every other manufacturing we have here. The blue water just happens to be the next step in their chain of unemployment.
These overseas workers that come on, and it's nothing against them, they just don't have access to this sort of training. And there are so many injuries, so many deaths and stuff that nobody hears about on these ships because they don't have the awareness or the capability of foreseeing issues that may come up, or prevention methods or anything like that.
Foreign ships are always been more dangerous because we're constrained by Australian law. We have to do the job safely, and if it can't be done safely, it won't be done. And I think there's a hell of a lot of injuries and indeed deaths that we rarely hear of in Australia, because these people are in a situation where if they don't do what they're told immediately, they'll be booted off the ship, probably not even back in their home port, and have to find their own way home. So they end up doing the job no matter what, at risk to life and limb.
In my years at sea, I learnt more in that small time frame than anything else I did in my life. A lot of the older blokes and the mentality of looking after each other and being there for each other, and the hard work itself, accomplishing goals and working as a team, that really made me appreciate what I was doing. At the start, I think we all believed that because the ship had been on the run for so long, without any incidents, without any hiccups, it was just a smooth operation, that we had a hope that we would be back on a new job, on a new ship, doing what we've always done. And it seemed pretty surreal at the time, but as the cogs started turning, we realised that they wanted us gone, and they wanted us gone pretty quick, and we weren't going to take it.
We worked all day, done all the jobs required of us. As we understand, we're off wages from the start of November, so we're all doing this without even being paid for it. But that's what seafarers do. So we worked the full day and into the evening, getting the vessel all ready to return to anchor, thinking everything was going to be fine. So we went to bed to get a good night's sleep, to get up and work again the next day, not knowing any different what the company, the captain and the government were up to in getting rid of us. So we turned in, and at 1:15 in the morning, they'd snuck 30 security guards on board the vessel, and they stationed 4 outside of everyone's cabin that was in their bed, the 5 of us. And the next thing we know, 3 burst in through every cabin at the same time, left 1 standing outside, woke us up in a dead sleep, handed us a piece of paper and give us 5 minutes to pack any personal belongings we have on board the vessel, and we'll be escorted down onto the wharf. So they stood in our cabin while we had to get out of bed, get dressed, try to pack whatever we could in the cabin. You're breaking me up.
I noticed that he said also, he's gone, your services are no longer required on this vessel. You have 10 minutes to pack your gear up and get off it. it's leaving for Singapore. Well, you've got to remember that ship was my home. And when I go there for 6 weeks. And being the chef, I've got my knives, I've got everything that I need for my trade. So there was no way knowing in 10 minutes I could get it all together.
I just knocked off night watch and I just turned into my bunk and just started to nod off, and there was loud banging at the door, and then the old man burst through and 2 guards in procession, and he threw my passport at me, gave me a letter. I was pretty dog tired. I was pretty fuzzy, but I just remember being in my jocks, getting told you got 10 minutes to pack your gear and get off, or you're going to be escorted off or taken off, dragged off. And it all happened so quickly. As soon as the captain threw the documents at me, he walked out, and the 2 guards said, "Hurry up, get what you can and get off." I said, "Can you give me some privacy while I get dressed?" And they refused to leave. I said, "We can't do that."
I knew that young Zach was on board, Wazza was on board, and Brett was on board. I didn't know how they were going. They'd isolated us quite well. The only thing I can say is there's one thing I've never been in this life, and that's scared. I was scared that night. They marched me down to the gangway, and that was one of the happiest sights I've seen at that stage. Was all the boys were assembled at the bottom, and I couldn't help them while we were on board the ship, but it was good to see them safe.
And we'd march down the gangway and we just stood there, yelling and screaming, and then a foreign crew got out of a van and walked up the gangway, and we could hear the engine room phone calling to give notice to prepare to set sail. And the foreign crew walked up. Obviously they didn't have an induction, and they walked straight to the mooring lines on the winches, and they started to let the vessel go. And the security guards had a ring around us. And then another batch of security guards were fore and aft, and they let go of the lines, refused us to leave that circle they had us encased in. And we just watched everything we knew, everything we loved, sail away.
It's the MV Portland. She's just sailed out of Portland Harbour. She's been taken over tonight by foreign crew. The Australian crew have been removed forcibly from their sleep in the middle of the night. At 1 a.m. in the morning, security guards came into their bed and took them out of their bed.
Even though a couple of security guards, you could see they felt sorry and they knew it was the wrong thing, but they were obviously hired from a mob in Melbourne. They'll bust down. Because once the vessel went, they all just hopped in the 2 minibuses and drove off. You wouldn't think that would happen to an Australian in an Australian port on an Australian ship moving an Australian cargo. But this is what the government, Alcoa, AMSA and everyone allowed to happen.
But this is a intrastate cargo, and it always should have been carried by an Australian ship. I wondered at times whether I'm getting close to depression, because it's a completely unnatural situation, sitting at home and not working. I'm used to working, and all of a sudden I find myself not only not working, but any skills I have are completely non-value. No one wants to employ you because who's a seaman to people ashore? I would have only had 6 or so years to go, and I would have been able to retire, whereas that's completely turned on its head, and it looks like by that time I'll be lucky to have a roof over my head. So the whole situation there is completely turned around.
Try and put Turnbull on a ship on $2 an hour 10 months at sea, not allowed to get off the ship for 10 months, and see how, or not even Turnbull, Turnbull's son or kids or whatever, imagine if they were doing that job, he'd be blowing up red raw about what's going on, and it's just not right. No one should be treated like that. It doesn't matter if they're third world country, whatever, no one should be treated the way these FOCs treat their seafarers.
If Australians ain't working, ain't paying taxes, I don't know what Australia of tomorrow is going to be.
The youngest bloke on board had just bought a house, so him and his mother and his sister had somewhere to live. How's he meant to pay that house off? Tell me that, Mr. Turnbull.
It was unbelievable. I personally thought it was unbelievable that this was happening and that it could be done to people. And deeply angry. And at the start it was the kind of anger you sort of have in rage, and as time goes by it becomes a bitter anger that doesn't leave you, like a shadow. And I think it changes you. It definitely, through the length of the dispute, what everyone went through during the time we were there, and to the crescendo it came to, it changes you emotionally. Yeah. And I find it hard to talk to people about it because the blokes that went through it, they were there and they lived it and they understand, and when you try to explain to someone, you just can't.
The only thing that's left to say is to the government and to Michaela Cash that the nightmares and the horrors that we are left to deal with will never leave us. We were just workers. We were Australian workers on an Australian ship carrying an Australian cargo from one Australian port to another Australian port. And we got thrown out of our workplace.